In May of 2010 in Houston County, Georgia, a violent sexual assault occurred that would remain unsolved for more than a decade and a half. The victim was a 40-year-old woman who lived in Warner Robins. On the night of the incident, she woke up to use the bathroom and discovered an unknown man in her living room. The man did not belong to the household and was later determined to be Dendrick Devontae Solomon. At the time of the assault, Solomon was 17 years old and living in the same general area as the victim, though the two were strangers. The victim called out to the intruder, but he instructed her to be quiet. He followed her into the bathroom and attacked her there. According to the Houston County District Attorney's Office, the victim attempted to resist. Solomon bit her finger and struck her in the face multiple times until she became unconscious. Once she lost consciousness, he carried out sexual assault against her. When police officers from the Warner Robins Police Department arrived later, Solomon was gone from the home. The victim was found beaten and bloody and transported to the Houston Medical Center for treatment. As part of the medical examination, the victim's fingernails were swabbed for DNA evidence. Those swabs were sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, Department of Forensic Sciences. At the time, law enforcement did not have a suspect and were unable to develop a DNA match. With no leads to a suspect, the investigation went cold. Evidence was retained and the case was logged as a cold case for forensic follow-up. For many years, the case remained unresolved. The victim, like many survivors of violent crime, lived with the aftermath of the assault and uncertainty about whether her attacker would ever be identified. For over a decade, there was no public update from investigators linking the DNA evidence to any individual. The case remained dormant in the Atlanta area and within law enforcement databases. In August 2023, more than 13 years after the assault occurred, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation issued a notification to the Warner Robins Police Department that a CODIS DNA match had been identified in the cold case. CODIS is the Combined DNA Index System, a national database that allows DNA profiles from crime scenes and convicted offenders to be compared across jurisdictions. This match indicated that the DNA recovered from the victim in 2010 potentially belonged to Dendrick Solomon. Investigators then took additional steps to confirm the connection. Once the potential match was identified, law enforcement obtained a reference DNA sample from Solomon. That sample was submitted to the GBI for comparison with the cold case DNA profile. The GBI was able to confirm that the DNA from the assault victim matched Solomon's DNA. With a confirmed match, investigators had both forensic proof and probable cause to pursue charges. Following confirmation of the DNA match, prosecutors from the Houston County District Attorney's Office filed formal charges against Dendrick Devontae Solomon. On March 20, 2025, Solomon, now 31 years old, pled guilty to one count of rape in connection with the 2010 assault. He appeared in Houston County Superior Court and entered the plea before a judge. At sentencing, the court imposed a life with possibility of parole prison term, reflecting the severity of the crime and the long history of legal work to bring resolution to the victim and the community. Court records indicate that the assault itself was thoroughly documented at the time. Officers responding to the 2010 call found the victim in a state consistent with a violent break-in and assault. The victim's medical records reflected the injuries inflicted, including facial trauma and defensive wounds. Law enforcement at the time conducted a thorough crime scene investigation, documenting the physical evidence and collecting biological samples for later forensic comparison. Over the 13 years before Solomon's identification, the witness testimony, physical evidence, and investigative reports remained archived. The passage of time did not erase the documentation of the crime, and it allowed newer forensic technology to be applied when it became available and applicable. The persistence of law enforcement cold case units and the routine review of unsolved DNA cases in CODIS contributed to the eventual match that drove the case forward. District Attorney Eric Edwards commented publicly on the case after sentencing, noting that the prosecution was a reminder that justice does not have an expiration date. He stated that law enforcement and prosecutors maintained their efforts over the years to solve the case, and that continuing advancements in forensic science, as well as cooperation between agencies, led to Solomon's identification and conviction. Edwards credited the GBI and local investigators for their work in following the DNA leads. Assistant District Attorney Justin Duane emphasized the severity of the assault, describing it to the media as an act of violence that violated a woman in her own home while she was alone. Duane noted that although the case went unresolved for many years, the confirmation of the DNA match and Solomon's willingness to enter a guilty plea brought a form of closure to the matter for the victim and her family. Solomon's guilty plea and sentence concluded the judicial phase of the matter. The life prison sentence means that, subject to the terms of Georgia law and any eligibility for parole review, Solomon will spend the majority of his life in custody. Georgia's sentencing guidelines for violent sexual offenses allow courts to impose lengthy terms reflecting both the nature of the offense and the need to protect public safety. Although the assault occurred when Solomon was a minor, the subsequent prosecution took place after he had reached adulthood. Prosecutors treated the 13-year cold case with the same gravity as any other serious violent crime, with the intervening years having no impact on the nature of the charges brought once the suspect was identified. The case underscores the role that forensic science plays in revisiting unsolved cases. DNA evidence collected at crime scenes can be preserved for years, waiting for new technology or database connections that can link the evidence to a known individual. In Solomon's case, the initial DNA could not be matched in 2010, but after years of population growth in CODIS and improved analytic methods, a match became possible. Victim services advocates often highlight the importance of ongoing review of cold cases involving sexual violence. For many victims, unresolved cases can leave psychological, emotional, and social burdens that persist over years. The identification of a suspect and the subsequent conviction can provide a sense of justice even after significant time has passed. Law enforcement agencies at both local and state level continue to operate cold case units, and the Houston County investigation into the 2010 assault is one among many such efforts aimed at resolving long unsolved crimes. The collaboration between local police, county prosecutors, and the state forensic laboratory exemplifies the multi-agency approach often required to make progress in these cases. In summary, the Dendrick Devontae Solomon case began with a violent rape in May 2010 that went unsolved for 13 years. Biological evidence collected at the time eventually matched Solomon's DNA through the National CODIS database. In March 2025, Solomon pled guilty to rape and received a life sentence. The case demonstrates how preserved evidence, advances in forensic science, and persistent investigative work can lead to resolution even many years after a crime occurred.
J.D. Wallace Simien is a man who was identified and later convicted in connection with a series of violent sexual assaults that took place in Sacramento County, California between late 2013 and early 2014. Over the course of those months, multiple women were attacked in separate incidents, and the perpetrator came to be known in law enforcement circles and local reporting as the Cloverleaf Rapist, because the assault locations near freeway interchanges on local maps resembled a cloverleaf pattern. Investigators linked the crimes together based on similarities in the manner of attack and geographical proximity. The first known victim was assaulted on December 10, 2013. She had been walking from a bus stop to meet her family at a bowling alley when she was approached from behind, pulled into an embankment near a freeway off-ramp, strangled, and raped.
After the attack, the assailant took her personal belongings, including her identification, and made a threat that she should not report the crime or he would find her. On January 8, 2014, a second woman was assaulted in a separate incident that would later be tied to the same suspect. She was walking with luggage to meet a friend who was giving her a ride to the airport when she became disoriented and lost. A man offered her a ride, and once inside the vehicle, the situation turned violent. The assailant stabbed her in the neck with a knife, strangled her with a scarf, hit her repeatedly, and forced her into sexual acts, including rape and forced oral copulation. After the assault, he took her wallet and again warned her not to report what had happened. A third incident occurred on March 8, 2014. On that early morning, another woman was walking home from a club when she accepted a ride from a man who approached her. Once inside the vehicle, the man pulled into an empty parking lot and attempted to strangle her, groped her, and restrained her against her will. In this case, the victim escaped from the vehicle and was able to seek help. At the time of these attacks, local law enforcement, including the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office and prosecutors from the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office, struggled to identify a suspect. The similarities between the assaults, including the geographical pattern of the locations and the methods of attack, led investigators to treat all three incidents as linked. However, traditional investigative methods available in 2014 did not produce a suspect, and the matter remained unsolved for years. The case lay dormant until advancements in forensic science, particularly the use of investigative genetic genealogy, enabled investigators to revisit cold cases with new tools and techniques. Law enforcement submitted DNA evidence from the assault cases to laboratories capable of generating a comprehensive genetic profile. That profile was then compared to public and private genetic databases to identify potential familial matches. By building family trees from distant relatives whose genetic data was available, investigators narrowed down possible suspects based on the genetic links and other supporting evidence. Through this forensic genealogy work, detectives were ultimately led to J.D. Wallace Simien, who at the time was approximately 40 years old and living in the Sacramento area. In 2021, Simien was taken into custody and booked on multiple felony charges related to the assaults, including kidnapping, rape, oral copulation, robbery, and related offenses. Authorities publicly identified him as the suspect linked to the so-called Cloverleaf rapist attacks. Simien's arrest was the result of coordinated efforts between the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office and the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office, with investigative support from forensic specialists trained in genetic genealogy. DNA technology and genealogy websites were cited by law enforcement as key tools in narrowing the suspect pool and providing probable cause for the arrest. Statements from the prosecutor's office emphasized the role the DNA evidence played in identifying Simien as the suspect many years after the crimes occurred. Following his arrest, Simien was held without bail at the Sacramento County Jail while his case prepared for trial. Charges against him included multiple counts related to forcible rape, forcible oral copulation, kidnapping to commit another crime, sexual battery by restraint, and assault with intent to commit rape, sodomy, or oral copulation, along with allegations concerning the use of a weapon. Nearly 3 years after Simien's arrest, the case went to trial in October 2024. A jury heard evidence presented by prosecutors about the series of assaults spanning from 2013 to 2014. The evidence included victim testimony, forensic analysis, DNA findings, and other supporting material that linked Simien to the attacks. On October 31, 2024, the jury convicted Simien of 2 counts of kidnapping to commit another crime, 2 counts of forcible rape, forcible oral copulation, sexual battery by restraint, and assault with intent to commit rape, sodomy, or oral copulation, along with allegations concerning the use of a weapon. Prosecutors stated that after the conviction, Simien faced a potential sentence of up to 89 years to life in prison under California law because of the severity and multiplicity of the offenses for which he was convicted.
Sentencing was scheduled for early January 2025, with prosecutors seeking a long term of incarceration, reflecting both the violent nature of the crimes and the pattern of predatory behavior demonstrated in the series of attacks. February 2025, media reports noted that a judge had sentenced Simien to 82 years to life in prison for the crimes, ensuring that he would serve the remainder of his life behind bars, given his age at sentencing and the length of the term imposed. The lengthy sentence underscored the gravity of the convictions and the court's consideration of the harm inflicted on the victims. The Cloverleaf rapist case drew significant attention in Sacramento and beyond because of how it spanned many years, from the initial attacks in 2013 and 2014 to the arrest in 2021 and conviction in 2024. The case illustrated the increasing role of DNA technology and investigative genetic genealogy in solving violent crimes that had gone cold for years, enabling law enforcement to re-engage with cold case files and pursue justice long after traditional methods had stalled. Victim advocacy groups and community members commented publicly on the resolution of the case, noting that identifying and convicting the perpetrator provided a measure of closure for survivors and emphasized the importance of persistence in cold case investigations. Law enforcement agencies involved in the investigation highlighted that the advances in forensic technology, particularly in genetic genealogy, were essential to breaking the case and connecting the crimes to a specific suspect. Simien's case also spotlighted legal debates about the use of forensic genetic genealogy in criminal prosecutions. While the technology has gained wide use following its success in identifying suspects in other high-profile cases, including the Golden State Killer, it has raised questions about privacy, discovery, and the admissibility of genetic-based evidence in court. In Simien's prosecution, however, the genealogy leads were primarily used to identify and locate the suspect, with more traditional STR-DNA matches and corroborating evidence introduced at trial to support the prosecution's case. J.D. Wallace Simien was born around 1981 and lived in Sacramento County at the time of his arrest. Between 2013 and 2014, he attacked multiple women in separate incidents of sexual violence that went unsolved for years. Investigators relied on modern forensic methods, including DNA and genetic genealogy, to identify him as a suspect, and he was ultimately convicted by a jury on multiple felony charges related to kidnapping and sexual assault. As of early 2025, he is serving a sentence of 82 years to life in prison in California.